Hi, nice to meet everyone. I'm Jamaican, so in Jamaica we say Wagwan. So it's kind of a Jamaican patois way of saying what's going on. How are you? Nice to meet you all. And yeah, so my name is Chelsea, and this is kind of essentially what I do every day, like which you guys probably do every day as well, is just sit behind a computer and click away. I am both a new media artist and digital product designer. So I have a background in product design or user experience design, however you want to like label it. I spent years working in the technology industry here in the US as a product designer, and I also now have my new media art practice using code to make art. And within that, I would say that I'm also a researcher. So like research informs
No.
both. Oh no, did it happen again?
No,
All
it's fine.
good?
No, no, it just
Okay, cool.
you were cut off for a sec, but that's fine now. Yeah.
No worries. Okay, cool, great, awesome. But yeah, so I am a media artist and product designer, and I think within that bubble you can surround me as a researcher. So like research informs both of those practices, whether it's my, artwork that I make through code. So design
Oh
and research
God.
is just honestly, ooh, is it good still? All good? Hello?
Hello. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Parce qu'en plus, je suis sur l'Ethernet normalement, donc ça devrait pas avoir de problème.
Est-ce que tu n'as pas un truc enregistré? Tu as déjà fait avec cet ordi ou pas?
Ouais, j'ai déjà fait avec cet ordi. Can you hear us, Chelsea?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
If
Well,
I
you
cut
you
up,
were. I don't know. Maybe it's just not the day.
yeah, no
Sometimes
worries.
everything
Yeah.
works perfectly, and then just but we should be fine because I'm anyway, you can start again. You were saying about
Okay. Yeah, no,
the
if I
research.
cut out, yeah, if I
Yeah.
cut out, just let me know. Yeah. But yeah, no, I was saying that like research basically informs my like practice both as like an artist and also as like a, I guess traditional digital product designer. On the artist side, it's like very design research, and then also, just research and references for me, like artists who inspire me, works that inspire me, works that made me think in a new way. Like I try to, practice like searching for work all the time and like looking at work that's out there, going to museums and stuff like that. And on the product design side, it's very, user research oriented. So design research, I make things for people and for people to use and experience. So all of that is informed by research. And then within that, I would say I use the word mentor. I don't know why I find it weird using the word teacher. I don't know. Maybe it feels too formal for kind of what I think I do, but like I prefer to use the word mentor. Teaching is involved in mentorship, but people have mentored me along the way to get where I am and given me, the opportunities that I have and like have a sounding board to go to them to learn more from. And I want to do the same for others to get into the space as well. So, that's why I do, talks like this for, your students. That's why, I, work with organizations here in the US to do workshops. That's why I teach workshops sometimes. And that's why I try to make myself as accessible as possible to people while, obviously while keeping, enough time for myself to do everything that I need to do. But I try to make myself as accessible as possible, whether that's through email or just being able for someone to ask me a question and I can just answer it. Like pledging over like 30 minutes of time has become more difficult recently, but I'm still trying to like find ways to make sure I can still do that and like give back to the space. Um, and then within all of that, I consider myself a lifelong learner as well. So like I will always probably seek out opportunities to learn more. I mean, I'm about to, I'm doing a PhD now. But also just like even if I wasn't doing the PhD, I would probably be finding ways to continue learning in the space, like doing workshops online at different places and like learning more about this practice or that practice or how to make this or how to make that. I think I'll forever be doing that. Um, so yeah, so for more context around me and how I got to, I guess, like where I am today. So I'm Jamaican. I was born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica. Lived my whole life there. When I was 18, I migrated to the United States to study. So I migrated to Atlanta to study computational media at Georgia Tech. And computational media is this degree that combines both computer science and design into one degree. I kind of always knew that I wanted to do a combination of both. Like I loved art growing up, always did the arts. Was also pushed, towards the sciences by my parents, but loved the challenge of the sciences. To be honest, I did. Kind of actually wanted to be an architect growing up because of that. But ended up coming to Georgia Tech to study computational media. I found it because it was the only degree that I could one of the only degrees that I found that combined both, like both computer science and design, or like science and art at like a bachelor's level. So I got my bachelor's degree from there. And then after that, that bachelor's degree introduced me to a lot. Like I didn't know creative coding existed. I didn't know UX design existed. I didn't know any of these things were a thing. I didn't know you could do that. And when I found out that you could do that, I like chased it and went after it. And then after graduating, I moved to New York to work. So I worked full time as a product designer, like I said, both at startups and at Dropbox previously. And that all happened while I was in New York. So I was in New York for up to almost 4 years, basically. And yeah, while I was in New York, the pandemic hit. So I lived in New York during the pandemic, and the heights of the pandemic, but like a weird, maybe it's always weird to say a silver lining with such like a global tragedy, but like a weird silver lining, I guess, of what happened there was that now one of the schools that I wanted to go to, which was kind of like it's an experimental non-traditional school called the School for Poetic Computation that was in New York. Now their classes moved online, and before their classes were all in person, and you had to kind of like dedicate 3 months of your time to kind of like do an in-person residency and not have your job and things like that, and like put your full focus there. But because of the pandemic, their classes moved online, and I could just work, not have to think about all of that, keep my job, and then just take a class like in the evenings basically with SFPC. And the reason why I did that is because product design, I wasn't coding for 4 years. So I stopped coding after I graduated. And I was just focused on designing the software, like doing the actual design part, and then working with the engineers who then coded, but I wasn't doing any of the coding. And I've always had this like seed planted in the back of my brain from my undergraduate experience, from the last year of my undergraduate experience, where that was the year that I was introduced to creative coding. That, oh, this is really cool. Maybe I'd want to do this. And SFPC was my way of getting back into that. They still do online classes today. You can take them globally from anywhere. School for Poetic Computation, highly recommend it. So yeah, so essentially I got into a class there and then took the class remotely during the pandemic, and that was kind of my way of like dusting off the dust off of my coding hands basically, and like regaining the confidence that okay, I can do this. I can get back onto the coding wagon and like feel that I can do this again. And I started to apply to grad schools at the same time. And one of the schools I applied to and very luckily got into was the MIT Media Lab. So from there, I moved to Boston to attend the MIT Media Lab, specifically the Future Sketches group. So specifically working with Zach, Vera, Dexter, Lingdong. I actually think you might know of Vera. I think she gave us a talk previously to you all. But yeah, so from there, moved to Boston to the Future Sketches group to basically get back into the act of like actually learning creative coding deeply and getting back into the idea of, okay, I want to chase after this as part of my practice. Recently graduated, so as you heard from the intro, very recently graduated and did a big loop-to-loop all the way back to Atlanta. So now I'm back in Atlanta and I'm doing my PhD back at Georgia Tech in digital media and continuing that study. But yeah, so I think one thing that's always helpful for me to frame as well is like how I frame my practice. So I'm a media artist and product designer who uses code for craft in the visual arts and performance, and I like place interactive art into performance. So I make visual artifacts that can be static, that can be animated, all the way to interactive art projects that can just be solo installations or projects used on stage. And a lot of that work is also heavily based around the body. So how can, not all of it, I still obviously do some visual artworks that are not body based, but a lot of it is definitely body-based. So a lot of it is exploring the idea of like, how can the body be used within computing more like not just our hands on a keyboard, but more wholly our entire body. And I kind of had this idea throwing around in my head at the moment of like, what is the body as input for media art? And essentially using that in media art. And that interest comes from me being, when I was younger, I did dance as an extracurricular growing up. So it was just always an interest of mine when I found this whole creative coding world to kind of merge that world with that, even though I don't dance avidly anymore, it just came from that interest. I think one thing that's always helpful for me, maybe to frame my work, is to have personal design principles. This is something that I learned a few years ago, probably like 3 years ago, after watching. I was not in Boston at this time when he gave this talk. Sorry, one second, there's a train passing. Sorry, I just had to close my door. There was a very loud train. So I wasn't in Boston at the time when he gave this talk. So this is Virgil Abloh. He gave a talk at Harvard GSD around his practice. And one of the things that, but it's a talk that's available online. And one of the things that I took away from this was, he made his own personal design principles. And for me, that was kind of a bit eye-opening because, every artist obviously has a through line with their work and kind of a thing that guides them. And it was eye-opening because, I spent years at companies that all have, design principles for their teams. Like every new company I was at or new team I was in had their design team had their own principles for how they wanted to like govern the design of their products, right? So I was like, why don't I make some for myself? And I did. So, and I think they're helpful for me to kind of ground my practice and like frame my practice and like as I work for myself and like remember things that drive me basically. And there's 5 of them. So one of them is, I make things for people to experience and use. So all of like a lot of my work is definitely based around people and human interaction, like humans using my work or experiencing my work. One of the greatest quotes that like I, was told, I think I had asked Zach one time, what does it mean to make art or some existential question like that? And his response to me was that, one of the things that someone told him that resonated with him was that art makes you feel an idea. So I think as well as both experiencing art, you can also feel an idea from art. So that's kind of one of the things that kind of guides my practice as I make things. Another thing is to be very rooted in myself and my background, rooted in me, rooted in where I'm from, Jamaica, not being afraid to have my own personal expression in there and like my own lens of, where I'm from in there. And also based on like pursue my passions and my interests within my work. So, pursue things that like I'm actually like passionate about learning about or passionate about inquiring or like spending time making things on. Another thing is experimental. I don't know about you, but one thing that often can plague me sometimes is like this perfectionism or over perfectionism in work, and that can often prevent you from just doing the practice of making the work. So one of the things that I've placed in my principles is just to be experimental, meaning perfection is not the goal. The goal is to start and to go through the process, and the process is what matters. You should fall in love with the process, not necessarily the end result. And the process for me is fun when I just like give myself the room to be experimental. So who knows if it will be a visual output that I am like visually pleased with in the end. Maybe it won't be, but but you need to go through the process to learn what you like and what you don't like, and actually practice the process. So experimental and focusing on the process and asking questions throughout the process, and also fun. Fun is enough justification for my work. That's one thing I always tell myself and remind myself, especially in a world where, I'm heavily surrounded by technology and, science and scientists. There's often always some need for there to be like a heavy justification of why are you making this? What is the scientific reason? And honestly, sometimes fun is enough reason to say, here's why I want to make this. And you'll find the value in it as you make it. So fun is enough justification for my work, and technology should be fun. And then also I stole this one directly from Future Sketches. It resonated with me while I was in the group heavily, and definitely I've taken it on to inform my practice for the rest of time. So this is straight from Zach and Future Sketches, which is poems, not demos. So there's this idea in the technology industry that, you always need like a tech demo, like demo or die, like have a tech demo that's like this amazing technological piece of equipment or something like that. And the goal is not to have like the best tech demo ever. The goal is to have a poem, to express something through the technology, express something through the work, express something that will allow people to feel an idea, right? Like expressing what I want to say or what you want to say through your work is the goal. So that's one of the principles I've taken on as well. So I think that just like helps you like frame kind of my work, and then now to go into like the actual like process of like how I make my work. So like again, experimenting, right? So one of the things that I do is what I call like code sketching. So just like sketching in code, like doing multiple small sketches in code of ideas. Maybe it's a really technical idea, maybe it's a visual output, maybe it's here's this algorithm that I want to figure out. I don't know how to code it yet. Let me just figure out how to code the algorithm, and then I'll figure out what to do with it visually after. Or maybe it's I just want to explore how can I create color in code, like through like I don't know, sine or cosine. How can I do that? So code sketching, so it's doing small snippets of code. Each one of those things was, a snippet of code, an exploration of an idea, an exploration of an algorithm, things like that, and like sketching in code and like starting there, starting small and just like trying an idea, trying a process. And code, the one thing that like I'll be honest, that frustrates me about code compared to like, being in Figma or being in, I don't know, Illustrator, just designing and placing, typography and rectangles and colors and things like that, is that the feedback really isn't instant until you have something. You write code, you run the app, you hope it works. 90% of the time it will not work, so you have to rethink it and figure out, okay, what do I want to do again? And even when it does work, you're like, okay, I've gotten to the step where it works. Now what do I want to do with that thing that's working? So it's always write code, run app, rethink. This is very like loop mechanism that's going, and it can take much more time than the instant gratification of like putting paint on a brush and putting the paint on the canvas, or doing something in Illustrator or something like that. It's like part of the thing. You don't have anything until you have something, honestly, with code. But that's also like part of the practice and just getting used to that, is that things take time. Things error out. It's just a computer telling you that I can't do that, so help me fix it. And then when you do the thing and you get somewhere, then the next step is to keep iterating on it. So you keep iterating on it to make it better and better, or rethink it, or reframe it, or do something else, and you keep going like that. And one of the projects that I did that with was kind of one of the first projects that I did when I got back to the media lab. So again, I was very fresh off of, not coding for a long time. And this was a project that I did to reintroduce me to like that feeling of just being in practice and process. And it's called Photo Rhythms. And basically it's an output of computer generated, like computer augmented portraits. So like using the facial detection. So detecting the face and then using those points of the face to then create different code sketches or generative sketches of visual outputs that I wanted to explore around like augmenting or manipulating the face. And these are literally all my friends and family who like I dragged them to take some pictures in my backyard while we were in another one of the heights of the pandemic, when I believe it was like the Omicron variant of the pandemic had, came and kind of like put everyone back in their home. So I was in Jamaica at the time, MIT was on break, and I had like grabbed them. I was like, okay, I'm going to be working from here for a month, so I need to test an idea. Can I just grab you for some portraits? And yeah, so this entire project is like based on taking the points of the face and then using those points to then create shapes and also manipulate those shapes in different ways based on the points of the face. And it has so many different outputs. Like this isn't even like it can have, because there's so much randomness in it, it's very generative. It can have so many different outputs that you can explore, like visual outputs that can come from this, and things that you can keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it essentially. But the question that I was trying to ask with this was, can computational methods be used to create more expressive versions of portraiture in the face? So can we use, creative coding to basically augment like portrait photography in fun ways? And this actually came from an even smaller experiment that I actually did while in that class at SFPC. We had learned how to do image averaging. So, how can you take a bunch of images and just average all the pixels together? So essentially like averaging and summing up all of the pixels across like three images. And I made this like weird output with that process and like with that assignment of learning image averaging. And it just made me think, oh, it'd be really cool to like, I don't know, augment the face in some way through code and through computing. And that was the idea that I was stuck on and really had in my brain. And then, you know, Zach suggested to me, you should try facial detection and like getting the points of the face and seeing what you can do, with that. And now we have this output of where we're at now, where we have all of these different like computational portraits that have been generated. And now we have like an app where I can go back in and I can like put more algorithms on it if I want to. So if I wanted to take it, you know, to somewhere else next, like I could try a different algorithm and try to augment the face again. So it's kind of, again, this like iterative cycle and iterative process that outputs the work. The work was featured in a showcase in LA with Vellum. Vellum LA, they are a digital art gallery and an NFT gallery, and Standard Vision, who are kind of the makers of these huge monolithic LED screens that people place on buildings or in production space and stuff like that. So it was around LA for the month of November last year, November 2022. And then it was also used on stage by a collaborator of mine, Catherine Helen Fisher. She's a choreographer who uses a lot of media art in her practice. And there's some sampling. Essentially, what she did, I'll pause the sound for a second. What she did was she had created this piece as actually part of one of her dance degrees that uses this media art on stage. And she had a part of the piece where she would walk around and essentially take pictures of both the dancers on stage and the audience. And she was doing something different with those pictures, but then she saw the photo rhythms work online on my Instagram, and she was like, what if we could, you know, just, you know, plug those pictures that I'm taking live into photo rhythms and have that display live like throughout the performance. So basically as people were performing and as the dancers performing, she was taking pictures. Those pictures would then like live be uploaded essentially to the screen on stage, and then they will see their face augmented in real time in front of them as part of the performance. Yeah, and that was part of a large showcase called Future Stages. So this was done at SV Studios in LA, so Standard Vision Studios, which is like a large production house space. And it featured multiple works from different dancers and choreographers who incorporate technology into their work in some ways to just showcase their work. And, you know, Kathleen was kind enough to reach out to me and include me as a part of a collaborator as part of her work. Yeah. And then I also thought, so you know, photorealism, it essentially takes an image and then augments it. But then I thought, what if we could do that, you know, live, like with a live video feed, and make it into an interactive installation. So this is another experiment I made while I was at the lab. I was like, what if I could take the thing that I made and then make it into an interactive installation with live video? And that was one of the explorations of this. So what if you could essentially just walk up to like an installation space? This is very prototypical, but you know, walk up to an installation space, have it detect your face, and then essentially augment your face in real time, and you can like play around and examine that. So this was like installed on the 3rd floor of the Media Lab for a few weeks. And yeah, it was just kind of there for people to play around with and see what would happen with it. But essentially it takes all of those sketches that I made and like augments your face live in real time in different ways. And it basically detects your face and shows you when it has your face in detection. So kind of a fun hack is that, you know, eventually people figured out if like they covered their face, it would, you know, obviously lose their face. So they figured out, okay, wow, this is actually detecting like me and the points of my face live in real time. And you know, where will it go next? Question mark. Like where would I want to take the basis of that project next? Do I want to add, like I said, add more algorithms to it so that it could like generate different forms and patterns and shapes? Do I want to, you know, put that interactive installation and improve it? You know, the one thing that wasn't so great about that prototype was that the camera quality was kind of low. So do I want to like redo it with a better camera, redo it in a different installation space, redesign the installation space that it's in to see like what if it was like a funhouse mirror, you know, instead of like a TV that you walk up to, what if it was like a digital funhouse mirror? Like these ideas, you know, you keep building on it, experimenting it, making different modes of it and models of it, and seeing essentially what happens. And then another project I want to talk to you guys about is a project called Illuminate, and this was actually my master's thesis project. So Illuminate, it was really asking the question, what would it be like if we could see our movement? So, we each like move in our own ways every day through our varying abilities and disabilities. And as we move, we're leaving an invisible trail behind. Like that hand motion left like an invisible trail behind, or like a wake of motion behind. What if like it's a very artistic question and very like maybe sci-fi question, but what if we lived in a world where we could see that, where we could like see our traces and trails left behind as we experience them live and in real time, and done in a way where it's just through our free bodies, not like we are adding any technology that restricts us. I'm not strapping gloves to my hands or strapping controllers to my hands or strapping goggles to my face. What if we can actually just do that freely and like explore that in an open space? And that's where Illuminate came in. I'll pause that real quick. I'm not sure if you guys can hear the sound, but essentially this installation was what I made for my thesis project, and it was exploring that idea of essentially, okay, with my free body in an open space, and also with like feeling like I'm manipulating the digital world in front of me in open space. Like, can this installation essentially allow me to like see my movement in that way, in a manner that's free, and like kind of allow people to just come in, experience that idea, play with that idea, and then leave thinking about, wow, what are the implications of that idea, both like the artistic implications and the poetic implications, but then also what if we had technology around us that like allowed us to like have these environments that detected us that freely and allowed us to do something with that ability. So it's kind of also like a technology like question that I'm like posing as well. And yeah, so like the process of like, again, making this also started from like smaller experiments that topped on top of each other, on top of each other, to like create more ideas, more ideas, more ideas. And then it was like, oh, what if I made this, right? It didn't just like, drop out of thin air and then, you make it and then it's perfect and then da da da. It was a process. So um the process of that was, one of the first projects that I did when I got to the lab, and this was the entire group did this at a time. The group was only Zach Ling Dong and I. It was very small. It was starting out. And we did this project called Finger Talk, where basically we were able to use a software developed by Apple called Core ML, where basically you can, and that's also what I'm using in Illuminate, where basically you can track the hand. You can track someone's hand. So we could track the pinch essentially. And what we did was that we're like, okay, we have this pinch working. And we just challenged each other, okay, go take this pinch interaction for a couple of weeks and see what fun, like playful ideas you can come up with for that interaction. So we have things in here like, me stretching like wow to like wow, and like being like expressive with like type maybe like through my hands, or like doing manipulating particle systems. I think Ling Dong made like a hamburger that you can like squeeze and like stretch. Zach was exploring like, what if I could like navigate my windows on my computer with this pinch? What if I could like zoom in and out with this pinch? So just fun things that you can like do to make like playful interactions around this simple thing. And really it was asking the question, what does it mean to have code that you can control with your body? And I do think questions, like simple questions, are a good way of framing work, because it kind of helps you think, why am I making this? What idea am I exploring? What idea am I trying to convey? So like this was about like, what does it mean to have code that you can control with your body? And then that eventually led to me, as I continued to just explore this idea of, me wanting to merge, dance or the body and code. There was a residency called Creative Coding Lab that I had applied to and thankfully got into. It's a 1 week residency, so it's very quick, very short, but it's for creative coders who are interested in merging dance and movement in their practice. And if you are interested in that, I recommend you apply to this as well. It's called the Choreographic Coding Lab. It happens every year. It happens in a new place every year. So I believe they just had it. I think it happened in, I could be wrong, but Berlin. This one was in the United Kingdom in Chatham, but it like travels around every year. And it basically brings together coders from all over the place who are interested in, and dancers from all over the place who are interested in combining technology and motion in some way to just essentially, honestly, come together for a week, meet each other, see what each other's working on, try to make something if you can. But I mean, it's a week, like, we don't always have, you really don't have that much time. And also to take workshops to learn from each other. So it's hosted by an organization called Motion Bank that does a lot of research around dance and technology. So they host a lot of workshops for us around their research work that they do, what things that they do in their practice, how they use technology in their practice. So it's a big like learning environment. And in that experience, me and two of my close friends who are dancers, the dancer you're seeing here, her name is Lana Onagoka, but her movements are choreographed by Rihanna Brown, who's off screen. And it was us essentially just taking this as a 1 week playground to play around with ideas. But I had found out that after making Finger Talk, I'd found out that this thing that Apple made, not only can it track the hand, but it can track the full body. So I was like, okay, what if I can like in this week just at least get the body tracking part working, just get the body like to actually be detected and seen. And then, okay, after we did that, what if you could just get like anything to draw on screen? I think our initial idea was, Rihanna was really interested in making like essentially posters of her dance movement. So what if like dance was a poster? So like track her movement, her live movements that she does in her choreography, her signature movements, and what if you could make that into like a movement signature into like a poster that was like a beautifully visually designed poster. That was the idea. That was a bit too much of a large idea for a week, to be honest, but that was the driving thing that was driving us. So we just said, okay, what if you can do this and then get anything to draw on screen? And we did. I don't think that this is like the most like, I guess, like presentable to the world thing yet, but it was like, okay, a step in the process was I got the body to track and now I'm drawing like something, anything on screen that looks like it's like following her body in some way and like expressing her motion well in some way. Like it's actually like it feels like her motion. So yeah, and that's what we did. And then I came back from that. I was in the middle of like my second year of my master's. So maybe you guys, some of you guys are going to be going into this soon. But at least at the media lab, we had to do a thesis in our second year. So I was like, I need to have an idea to make for my thesis. And that's when this idea came to me. I was like, wait a minute, what if I could like actually make this and like it could actually be like a huge installation that like tracked motion and allowed you to like see it and like, because for me it was like, here's this thing that's following you and it's like leaving a trace of where you were. So like what if I could actually make that? And that's where the idea for the actual work came from. And then it evolved, over a year of work, then it evolved into Illuminate, where I was able to install it in the Music and Theater Arts building on campus, and have people come up to it and actually interact with it and open it up to the public. I'm not sure if you guys can hear my sound, but these are some of my like favorite video reactions. If you can't hear, yeah,
we don't really hear the sound, but we have the
okay.
we have the video.
Yeah, the videos. Okay, basically she walks as she walks into the space. She's like, "Whoa!" Like she says like an audible like, "Whoa!" Like what is happening? Like so this is like the first time like a participant who like hasn't, or a person who hasn't seen or used this experience before experiencing this actual thing. Apologies that I haven't shared my sound. I'm not sure how to do that actually. Let's see.
That's okay. Don't worry. That's fine.
Okay,
Maybe
cool. Yeah.
we can have a look at the videos later on or something. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, cool, no problem. Cool. So yeah. So she walks into the screen and she basically says, "Whoa." When she sees that enter, she has like a large audible like, "What is happening? Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. This is so cool." And then she like gets used to it and she feels it and she's like, "What is happening?" And then starts to explore it. So like that's like one of my favorite things about like I think making interactive arts is just like the reaction of people after they've actually usually, and that's always my goal, is to like, that's a goal with my art, is like bring joy and like fun and happiness to people as they use the experience. Um, and yeah, these are some of my like favorite like documentations of that exhibit, of people like being in the space using it. So basically people had the space to themselves. They signed up for a time slot, they had the space to themselves to explore for between like 30 minutes to an hour, however long they wanted to stay, and just like dance and have a good time and move their bodies and like feel this experience of like controlling a digital world in front of you with your free movement, essentially. Um, and yeah, some of the things that I love about this, like it feels very like, some of the outputs feel very like, like you're riding in air, like almost like ephemeral graffiti is how someone described it to me, like you're making temporary graffiti in the air. I thought it was a very beautiful description of it. Um, and yeah, I just loved how like people essentially just came in and like kind of expressed themselves through their bodies in their own ways. Everyone was very different. Some people were very like calm and like just trying to like understand what was happening in them. Some people were very already like just like, this encouraged me to move in ways that I haven't before, and just encouraged me to move my body and explore my body and feel my body. I found her dancing very, very beautiful. It was very like almost like airy and flowy and like floating in the air. I thought it was a very beautiful clip of someone using the experience. And yeah, so like just more clips of that experience. Like again, like the feeling of like kind of like, I don't know, leaving a signature of your movement air, or like leaving something that you decide to write and play around with in air with your hands and feet, is always really interesting to me. And then some people went like really crazy with it. They were like, once they learned how it works, they were like, okay, this thing draws. They're like, can I hack it? And they basically start to do things to hack it, like joining their bodies together, or trying to move so fast that it filled the whole screen. So like it filled the whole space in front of them with visuals by moving really fast everywhere. So it was just really interesting to see like how people like hacked it, had fun with it, played around with it. It's kind of one of my favorite things to see. But yeah, this is me trying to write high in the air, like HI, high. I think it worked. I think it kind of works. Yeah. Um, and yeah, just like fun explorations of that work. One of my favorite settings of this work as well is this setting where it's kind of like springs in the air, very flowy, very like reflective of my actual like how fast I'm moving, how slow I'm moving. It feels very real to my motion. And like spirals and circles is always really fun. Cool. Awesome. But yeah, and so that was like the um public opening, public installation version of that. Um this is also just a fun video I want to show you guys of like, this is the debug view. So like having a view where, I see, just so I can check that it's working every time I set it up and install it. I always think it's fun to see like the actual body motions being tracked, and like the behind the scenes of how the thing is actually working, and kind of like the debug screen that I've coded for myself to like make sure this thing doesn't like fail as it's like up for installation. Um, and yeah, and this is like some like quick shots of me like actually like building the installation and like taking it down. But yeah, I think this was done for a public installation, so for people just to like stumble upon it, sign up for it, and like use it as like public play essentially. But like I could also see this being, used on stage with a dancer. I could see this even being used more deeply to where, what if I coded a drawing system based on the choreographer's style? So what if the drawings or the things that you see left in the air were more like emblematic or expressive of the choreographer themselves, or their actual, personal style, their style, individual styles of dancers, who knows, things like that. But yeah, um, and yeah, this is just me taking down the installation, and then one of my good friends, Thais, comes in to help me lift this very large scrim that could definitely not be done with one person. But yeah, and yeah, so this was my master's thesis, so I had to like, I wrote a document on this, and I intentionally wrote this document so that it could be like a teaching tool. So for people to see, I wrote it very maybe academic-y, like not in a overly complicated academic voice. I wrote it in my voice as if I was speaking to you. I wrote the like history of like, you know, different pieces of art around motion that have, you know, been done across history and that has inspired me to make this work. You know, I wrote about my entire process from beginning to end of making this work and how I, you know, coded the brushes, how I did this, how I did that, like gave code examples as well in this work. And I also like outlined, you know, what I learned from it, what I learned from people experiencing this work as well. I think, I don't know if I'm correct about this, I think MIT theses are publicly available through the MIT library online. If it's not, because maybe I have that perception just because I had like a email that could access it, maybe, I don't know, but I feel like they are. If not, I feel like I'm gonna make this publicly available in some way anyways, and probably like, I don't know, post on a blog or something. But I'd love for it to like, you know, be there for people to actually pick up and, you know, try to learn how to like, I don't know, make these custom brushes myself. You know, that's how I wrote this out, like step by step. Here's how I made these brushes, then here's how I connected the body to it. And yeah, so if it's not actually available through the library, eventually it should be within the next year, then I'll make it public anyways. But yeah. And yeah, so I mean, where to go from there with those projects. I think the word is keep experimenting. So the where to go next in my practice is just to keep experimenting. You know, I'm moving on to my PhD. I'm also kind of in the process of like developing as not developing, founding my own studio to house like my practice as well. But yeah, the idea is just that this is, you know, this is my personal practice and my personal thing that makes me happy, and my way of keeping that going and not putting too much pressure on myself or like overthinking it is to just keep experimenting, you know. Like one of the things that came out of Illuminate, were all of these sketches, which is just like, because I had to make these brushes that were drawing in the air, I learned how to like essentially make custom like brushes through sine and cosine in code. Was like a part of that I had to figure out. And I was like, oh, what else can I make with sine and cosine? Like, what animations can I make? What colors can I create? What else can I make? And this is literally a bunch of like sketch outputs from that idea. So like there's another project idea. Like, what is this? How can I make things with circular motion in code? So like that's like another project from that thing that, you know, I made. And that's kind of like how the ideas keep flowing. So just keep experimenting. And like keep writing down ideas. I have so many ideas all the time. I'm very sporadic with it. I, you know, text myself notes. So like when I have an idea, I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I just text the idea to myself. I write it down in my sketchbook. I probably like I use this thing called Arena, which is kind of like an artistic Pinterest to like bookmark things that I see online. I'm like very sporadic with how I keep things down, but the point is that I always like write things down and like remember, oh, here's this idea I want to explore, or I want to learn this, maybe I can explore this idea with this. And that's kind of how the process keeps going. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing. It was so interesting to, I really appreciate that you shared your process, and using the question to frame your experimentation, I feel is something that could be really simple, but at the same time really powerful. Maybe like that could be, I think, a great takeaway for our students. But I don't know if there are questions for Chelsi. Things, yeah. Do you want to maybe move closer so make sure she hears you? Yeah.
Thanks.
So, hi, I really
Hi.
would like to know, do you have designers or programmers that you are looking up to for inspiration?
100%, yes, all the time. I mean, Zach was one of them and still is one of them. Luckily enough to call him like a mentor now. Vera is one of them. She's a friend now. But I mean, honestly, even outside of the people who I like have met and know personally, one of the things that I do, and I did this with product design as well when I was like in product design, was I honestly just follow and keep up with the work of product designers who I look up to, creative coders who I look up to. And honestly, I've realized a lot of the community is online. So like a lot of the connections of people that you meet, you know, around the world or across the world are made from fostering connections online, honestly, through things like Twitter and Instagram, to be frank. So definitely Zach, definitely Vera, Ari Melanciano, who I believe also spoke to you guys, has always been an inspiration for me for a long time, even before I came to the Media Lab when I was an undergrad and I just graduated. A friend of mine, I think, showed me her work, and I think she was at NYU ITP at the time. And I was like, wow, that was also kind of like this is really cool. I could do this as like a grad degree kind of thing. And yeah, a whole bunch of people. There's I'm gonna say like online to like at names now, so not necessarily people's real names, but like There's someone online, her name is Computational Mama. She does a lot of like AI work around like motherhood and her expression as well, who's amazing. There's Cashflow, his name is Justin, but he does a lot of like really cool work. There's Lauren Lee, I'm forgetting her last name. I can't believe I'm forgetting her last name. But Lauren, she basically was a creator of P5JS. There's Daito Manabe. There's just a whole bunch. There's Finger Code. There's Spongenuity. There's a whole bunch. Honestly, I could keep like rattling off names. It's just kind of like people that like I follow online and I look at their work and I'm like, this is really cool. Would love to meet you one day. But then I also like connect with them while I'm online. So like not in like obviously not in creepy ways, but like keeping up with their work, like being interested in their work, saying what made you explore this? How did you do this? And actually just kind of like making an organic connection with them. Iskra is one. She's in Spain. But yeah.
So basically we have to look at the people you follow on social media.
if you want to, yeah, that could be a good place to start. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But I feel like if you want to start into like practicing creative coding, like you see that, like so many creative coders just share the sketches every day, and I feel that's a way to like get into the community. And I mean, of course you need to have the discipline and motivation to practice every day a little bit, but I feel that's how you also build your network.
It is, yeah. It definitely is. And like trying things out yourself, not being afraid to show your work. I was definitely afraid of showing my work before photorhythms, and Zach pushed me to show every output that I made. And that's why I'm like decently okay with the idea of showing my work now. But that's what leads to people like not just seeing your work, but like being either like coming to you and being like, how did you make this? Or what did you do? And then you connect with people, and then, you learn from each other's practices and you see what's in like each other's practices as well. There's also, if you're interested in like learning, like as like an introduction, the coding train on YouTube, Daniel Schiffman, is probably how 5,000,000,001 creative coders around the world learn creative coding in the first place. So if you're interested in learning from scratch, so the coding train on YouTube, he does a lot of tutorials in like P5JS, and it's awesome. I still use it to this day for if I want to learn something new, I go to him as well and just look at a YouTube video and try to code it out. But yeah.
Are you keeping on with the body and movement for your PhD? Are you
that's my plan.
Yeah.
No, that's my plan. Yeah. I want to keep doing that work. I'm really curious about like body as input, like I was saying, and also honestly stage. Like how can I have this like this is maybe like this is like a revealing of what I'm thinking about now. It's not concrete, but like I have this idea of like what if like the stage was like an interface that like we could actually like a performer could actually interface with live and like control a stage the same way we control a computer interface. So like a lot of ideas around like performance and stage and body, and also just visual art explorations and ideas. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I can't wait to see what you're gonna do for your PhD.
Me too. Yeah, me too. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was so great to hear you speak about your work. I mean, I've been following your work for a while online, but it's so nice to have all your, the process and the background behind it. So I really appreciate it. And I hope we can find a way for you maybe one time to come in Geneva or something like that. And let's definitely keep in touch, and good luck with your PhD and your work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me. It's nice to meet you all. Feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you.